I've got the express privilege of sitting with some of the D&D legends, and we're going to have a roundtable discussion about how becoming a new Dungeon Master is a lot easier than you might think. Again, I'm B. Dave Walters. Let's meet this table. If we could go around and have everyone say their name and a short description of their D&D experience. So let's just start over here. Who are you, good sir?
Sure. Hello, I'm Kaiji Tang. I have been playing D&D since 2nd edition, so it's been a while. I'm also a voice actor. If you watch anime, you may have heard me in Jujutsu Kaisen as Gojo, Satoru. And if you play video games, you may have heard me as Ichiban Kasuga in Yakuza Like a Dragon. Happy to be here.
Perfect.
Dang, dude.
I'm Satine Phoenix. I'm a professional dungeon master and story coach, and I make D&D supplements, content, and I run Satine's Quest. It's gaming events. This is like my life. This is all I do.
It's true.
I've been playing for 32 years.
Wait, how can you have been playing for 32 years when you haven't been alive for 32 years?
I am an elf. I'm an elf, remember? So I'm like
surprised you're not wearing the
530.
Oh, that's true.
I don't recognize you without the ears.
That even count. And you, good sir?
My name is Eric Campbell. I have been running Dungeons & Dragons since my first GM, Curtis Galloway, passed me a book called Dragons of Autumn Twilight across the lunch table in 7th grade back in '94. And now I get to be a DM and go to events like Dungeons & Dragons or D&D in a castle in Europe, which is a ton of fun. So yeah.
Last but certainly not least, ma'am.
I'm Kate Welch. I am a fellow dungeon master. I previously worked as a game designer on Dungeons & Dragons, and now I DM comedy one-shots for dodos all over the world.
You know, and apparently, word is we might see you doing a little bit of the dungeons and possibly additionally the dragons here a little later today.
In no particular order, yes.
That's it. It's okay. So no spoilers because we're going to see the game soon.
Yes.
But yes, you guys did pre-tape that one.
We did.
Let me just. What was your favorite part of the game?
Nope.
Nope. Nothing. Not even. It's too many favorite parts.
Too many favorite parts. I want to say that. I want to say that when Jack Black opens his mouth and songs come out.
Right.
But like that, even that seems like too much of a spoiler.
Right.
So.
Yeah. This when the part where they're saying words is your favorite part.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm B. Dave Walters. I guess you saw me doing a little bit of this yesterday. I also have been playing since the 7th grade, which was far before 1994, since 2nd edition. But you know, one of the things we wanted to talk to you today is, we all been doing this a long time, but we all started somewhere. And if you've never done it, or if you're thinking about doing it, that's kind of what we want to talk to you about. You know, what are some of the tools necessary to get started? Spoiler alert, let me save you some time. If you're thinking about doing it, do it. Get your friends together, get some dice, get a player's handbook, and tell some stories, but we're still going to talk in greater length about all of this. So, you know, I'll go in reverse order here this time. We'll start back over here with Kate. In order to become the legendary DM that you are today, are you aware of the fact that you are the Kate Welch?
Oh my God, shut up.
But, you know, you had to start somewhere. You all had to start somewhere. You know, how did you get into running your very first game?
Okay, so I had played, I think, 3.5 as a player for years. I'd never been a dungeon master. I applied for a job as a game designer on Dungeons & Dragons, and I got the job. And I said, damn, I should DM a game.
What a great first game.
I did not tell them this, that you're finding out the hard way, wizards. I'd never DM'd a game
that's the
before.
right
I started here.
I mean, way to build a parachute on the way in.
That is called a 20 on a deception check.
Definitely rocked the deception check. But I played it with a group of people. I downloaded an adventure from the DMs Guild called The Wild Sheep Chase. So good. And I ran that for some friends and got completely hooked. And I've been DMing like a maniac ever since.
That is incredible. I'm gonna throw a crazy curveball. Switching to Satine. See, look at that. See, I gotta keep the table engaged. See what I'm doing there? You know?
I'm okay.
Yes.
What led to you getting started with your first game?
In 2010, I started the community over at Meltdown Comics, so it was D&D Melt, and it was really fun. We had 40 people and no dungeon masters, and I was like, I guess I'm going to have to do that. So back then there was 4th edition and Living Forgotten Realms. So there's like, you play D&D in Australia, and then that like kind of had this like corresponding place in the world. So I loved all the modules. I downloaded all of the modules, started piecing them together. And so I was running games for between 10 and 20 people at a time. And that was like, you know, hard mode. But I loved it, and it was great. And then other people.
Like expert, like 6
Start at the top.
I jump in
Sweat
face
mode.
first to everything.
Just do it. Just do it. Yeah.
But it was that easy because I wanted to facilitate that space for those people, and they loved it. I made them get really creative with it so that encounters could go fast. Yeah, it was wonderful.
In KG, how about you?
Sure. I have sort of, I think, a more classic origin story, right? So I was in school, I had a group of friends, we all wanted to try out this D&D thing, right? But no one was willing to DM. Now, over the course of like 1, 2, 3 weeks, we were all prepared, but no one was willing to DM. So finally, I was like, fine, I'll do it. Give me the book. And that basically set the stage for that group of friends expecting me to do it for the rest of eternity.
That's how they get you.
So that's how they get you, right? So
Yeah.
my entire career playing this game has been me over and over with one group of friends, another group of friends going like, oh, great, we're playing. Who's DMing?
Right.
It's going to be me, isn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
It's going to be me, yeah. And 20-something years later, here I am.
Here you are. But you, sir, at the big table at D&D Live. So clearly it worked out.
It did work out.
How about you, Eric?
Boy, we have a lot in common. Yeah, for me, it was, I got introduced to it, of course, like I said, in 7th grade, but I became a DM because, again, nobody wanted to run the game. Like, everyone was intimidated. They were a little worried about the rules, or they really just wanted to be a player. And what the kids on my street ended up doing was they bought me the box set of Council of Worms 2nd edition,
Yeah, man.
like D&D.
I got that box.
And yeah. So they like, now you can play a dragon, and I was like, all right, I don't know. But they bought me the box set and they delivered it to me, and you open it up and you see the hexagonal maps and you see the booklets and the art, and I was like, oh, I'm running this game, aren't I? I'm running this game.
Doing it,
I'm
yeah.
running this game. So that's how it all came into being.
I mean, at least they bribed you with the book. You know, they're like,
Yep.
we might
The
make an
nepotism.
I was like,
offering.
and that was back in the day where you were mowing lawns to get your money,
that's
and
right.
so I was like, that's 4 lawns worth of D&D.
That's a great way to look at it.
I was
Yeah.
like,
That is true.
I'll run this game.
That is,
You know,
that is a lot
what
of
I find
commitment.
really interesting is that all of us, and B-Dave, you're also a dungeon master. May I ask you your origin story?
You know, to tell you the truth, I was sitting here racking my brain with it. I've been doing this so long. I don't remember the first time
crap,
I did
have
it.
you forgotten?
I think literally forgotten the Forgotten Realms. But what I do know in my earliest memories is we would alternate. And it was me and one buddy. And part of the reason why I'm so comfortable running one-on-one games now is my earliest games were one-on-one. And my first character was an elven fighter mage thief based on Vampire Hunter D.
Heck
Big
yeah.
floppy hat and a sword, and a hand that talked because reasons. And then he would run games for me, and then I would run games for him. So,
so cool.
it really did kind of come up in parallel of doing the same things side by side. And then just over time, same as you, whenever both of you, whenever nobody wanted to do it, because I do think that's a common misconception that people think it is very difficult or they're really afraid. This one I'll just kind of put out there for whoever wants to take it first. What do you think is the biggest fear people have about DMing, and why is that not a thing?
I do want to chime in because a new phenomenon has I think sprouted up in the past few years, and it's interesting to me because it's such a double-edged sword in that D&D, we finally opened it up so that folks are actually seeing what a bonding event it is and how exciting it can be and how there's no wrong way to play it so long as you're taking care of each other and having a blast. The flip side to that is because it has become so visually accessible, there is suddenly a pressure that people are putting on themselves to be a dungeon master now because of what they see on stream.
We call that the Matt Mercer effect.
Yeah.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks a lot.
What's up to you, Matt Mercer?
So it's interesting to me because beyond that, it's the classic like anxieties of being on the spot, of being responsible for everybody else's good time and all that other stuff. But now, because of like this onset of media, I think a lot of people feel a lot of pressured. So all the more reason why it's super important for folks like us to just be like, no, this we're you, like go do this.
We're different.
Yeah, throw some dice.
I think it's very important for folks to remember that the way I treat it anyway, it's like it's not so much about like, yeah, you have to memorize some rules, right? But you have to remember that the overall experience is like, you know, your friends coming over on game day, watching football. It's kind of like the same kind of like, you know, you look forward to D&D night because you get to hang out at a table with your friends, kind of chat about how your lives have been, you know. That element of the table is very important. It's you know, yes, everyone wants to slay a dragon, but you know, we're all there to have a good time. We're all there to see each other. We're all there to hang out, drink some Mountain Dew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The best part is when it's that game session where you've been running for a while and you're starting to ease into it, and all of a sudden you start realizing that you're all cracking the same inside joke from like 4 games ago, and it just keeps snowballing. And then you're 3 months into a game and you love your characters, you love the players, and it's just making that commitment, that first step, and just daring to be whimsical and have some fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very important.
And on that thread, you know, I talk to a lot of people, and the fear is I'm going to forget. I'm going to forget the story. I'm going to forget all these things. But the solution to that is run a module. It's right in front of you. There's box text for you to read. Then the other one is vulnerability. People don't want to be vulnerable, and so they're afraid of making mistakes. But my biggest solution is the players don't know what you don't know. Like you can make the whole thing up or read it from the book. They will believe everything you say.
True.
So,
Yeah. I think that the question that I get the most often from people who are contemplating being a dungeon master is like, how do I make sure they're having a good time, you know? And I think honestly, coming to the table with that attitude is perfect, right? Like you should be worried about them having a good time, but the secret is it's just not that hard to make sure that people are having a good time. You read the cues, you can check in after sessions and be like, yo, did you like that? What do you like? What do you want to do more of? What do you want to do less of? But like if you are the kind of person who worries about a table of people having a good time and that's what's keeping you from being a dungeon master, you are exactly the kind of dungeon master this community needs more of, seriously.
Generally, there's 2 things that keep people away, right? It's the memorizing the rules and it's the improv element, right? Because you have to be very quick on your feet. I would say for the latter, the rules, don't worry about it so much. The book is right there.
Yeah.
You know, take a second to be like, hold on. That's what would happen. You know,
Right.
that part is almost negligible if you just
And it's
stop
actually
worrying
part
about
of
it
the
so much.
culture too, is like checking the book.
Yeah.
Yo, let's do more of that. Let's
Check
normalize
it's right
book
there.
checking.
It's right there.
You know, when I was sitting here on this very spot looking at rules in real time, because again, I got literally 5 different editions of this game floating around in my
Yeah.
where things
Still
work
ask for
differently.
reflex checks?
Yeah, exactly.
Is it bloodied?
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
You know, I will tell you this also. You know, people talk about this Matt Mercer effect. You know, it's like, ooh, I can't do what Matt does. I'm like, well, you know what? You can't. You know, you can't do what Kate does. You can't do what Satine does. You can't do what I do. But we can't do what you do.
They can do what I
You know,
do.
we can. Well, you can't do what the rest of us do. No, they're about to see what you do, Kate, and they wouldn't be able to.
One of the things that I love about specifically this edition of Dungeons & Dragons is 5th edition D&D, speaking from personal experience, this is the most accessible version of D&D I've ever played. As somebody who's not neurotypical, I have ADHD, it's very difficult for me to absorb rules. And it's very hard for me to sit down and read rule books and absorb them. And so speaking of to what y'all were saying about being worried about rules and stuff like that, that was a huge terror for me. And anxiety just like freeze up just trying to read that stuff. This version of D&D is the most accessible I've ever played. And because there are so many live streams and now like D&D Beyond and like all of this great stuff that's out there now, I just want to say that if that is something that you are worried about or if it concerns you, speaking as somebody who has a lot of trouble staying focused and being able to read the content, even when it's something I love, this is the best time to do it. This is like the best time to do it.
Yeah, I mean, the rules exist to facilitate the story, not the other way
Exactly.
around.
Yeah.
Page 5, 4, and 5 of the Dungeon Master's Guide. It is a guide. It is not a rule book. You are the dungeon master. You can tweak and twist it. Just let everyone know it.
Yeah, absolutely.
May I say that the current edition DM screen also is
Super
fantastic.
great for accessibility.
Yeah.
Fantastic. It's almost
Fantastic.
everything you need. You just set it up, bam. You almost rarely will have to check
Yeah.
the rule book.
Yeah.
Never play without it.
Another question for you guys is, most jobs you have like 2 or 3 things that you kind of have to do on repeat. If you're a bartender, you have people management, cleaning, and being charismatic. Actually making the drinks isn't even in the top 4. What do you all think are the main 2 or 3 things that a DM has to repeat? Because obviously every game is different, but there's definitely certain through lines.
Right.
Yeah.
I think one of them definitely has to be adaptability, to being able to be as adaptable as possible, keeping an open mind about everything. You may have set a beautiful token-esque fantasy adventure for your players to romp through, but they will want to start a bank, so you're just gonna have to go with it. That's
Detour
definitely
to the
one.
talking squirrel. They're like, no, we're not leaving this town. We're talking to this squirrel.
That's right. This squirrel is our entire life right now.
For the next 3 hours, you're like, this is where we live, yeah.
I would say listen, like kind of quiet down. A lot of dungeon masters do a lot of talking. Quiet and listen. And then accept every different person at the table with all their different experiences and the way they want to play, and then react. So improv is a lot about reacting. So in order to react properly, you have to listen and really hear what everyone's saying. So that would be my 3.
I don't know 3. There's one in particular that I gravitate towards every single time, and that is practice letting go of expectation.
Yeah.
and learning how to just find the humor in your frustrated expectations. I have a player that you very well know named Sam Delev who likes to make friends with every enemy we come across. They want to make friends with everyone because they're just a soft boy. Sam just loves doing that. And I have had plenty of encounters where I was like, this is going to be the monster that's going to mess them up. You're going to get bloody nose on this one.
Nope.
And no, they're going to have tea tomorrow. And and Sam's going to listen to like, okay, so tell me your aspirations and you should join our party. And I'm like,
The tentacle whore's like, I want to be a dentist.
My mom didn't listen.
My dad was ashamed of me.
I will just say this, that when the players do stuff like that, and you, if you are willing to go along with it, you will be shocked at the depth and like complexity and pure joy that your game will bring if you yes and with the players.
Yep.
And that comes with learning how to very generously let go of frustrated expectation, because you never know the gold you're about to get if you just let the players go.
Yeah, to both of your points, I think especially early DMs, they really have like their Tolkien-esque epic, that this will take place in 3 parts, chapter 1, and it's like, no, they're not going to do that. They're just not. When I plan my adventures, I never plan the second half. Yes. I know the beginning very clearly. I know roughly where we need to be by the half and roughly where it's going, but I leave all of this open for adaptability.
Same here.
Same.
I got my little technique I got from watching, no joke, watching Janine Garofalo do stand-up comedy. Because all she would do is go up on stage with a notebook and bullet point things she wanted to talk about and just go. So then I would do the same with my D&D game. I just bullet point, okay, this, NPC, go. And just go. That's how I've done it ever since.
You mentioned yes and, which for people that don't live in LA where we throw words around like that, that's an improv tactic, because when you're improving with people, you never say no, because that stops the gag.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If like you and I are like, oh, yuck, can I interest you in a peanut? And you're like, no.
Well.
Please, so to the best of your ability, you say yes and. There's times that at least you might have to be like, well, no, but maybe that doesn't quite work like you thought. What are you trying to accomplish? Are you trying to make friends with the monster? Are you trying to distract the monster? Maybe we could try this, and it's a story you build together. But sorry, Kate, 2 or 3 things.
You guys, you took all the good ones, but I do think one thing that maybe is sort of related to all of these is being the party person, the facilitator, project manager. Maybe those are 3 different things. But I mentioned this before, just being interested in everyone's good time and making sure that you are facilitating, that your primary drive is not necessarily to entertain yourself, it's to entertain the rest of the people at the table, and that is where the reward comes from for you. That's gonna feed you forever. That's gonna make you the eternal dungeon master, sorry.
Actually, that's a real. I'd like to add a little point onto that. I think an important thing for any dungeon master to do is become a fan of your player's characters.
Yes.
If you are if you are actively into the stories they're telling, they will notice, and everyone will have a much more amazing time.
Yeah,
Root
totally.
for them.
Root for your players.
Give everybody a chance to shine.
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Exactly.
Because you're
Yeah.
playing with them. They're there to play with you.
collective
It's not the
storytelling.
game master versus the players.
No.
It's all of us.
Yeah.
Have y'all?
Yeah.
I have a question to ask y'all real quick. Have y'all ever had a moment where something really bad happened to like a player character and you as a GM got emotional because
Yes.
you didn't want it to happen either?
Yeah.
Like you make the roll and you're like, oh no.
Oh no.
Yeah. It's that moment at the table where everyone's like,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's that delicious moment where you realize you've become audience too, and you're just like you're rooting for that player character so much. It's a burden sometimes, and you're like you roll that nat 20 on
those
that dragon.
those
you're like,
moments, exactly. Those moments come from like those big epic moments where you're like, okay, I'm gonna make the roll at the center of the table so we can all see what happens.
Oh my God,
it's
yeah.
from those moments where it's like, well,
I can't cheat this.
Yeah. Yeah.
oh, it's so good though.
Yeah, it's die glorious. Yeah. I know I just sort of mentioned in passing there that I don't play in the second half. In terms of planning, what's the least you all have ever planned for a session, and how'd it go?
we talked about this a little bit beforehand.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've probably all had a session where we didn't plan at all, right?
Yeah.
I
was
do
nothing?
a lot of sessions where I don't plan at all, but
Right.
the least
If
was.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
No,
Roger.
you please.
No, you were just about to start in the story, and I
There
totally
I
stepped on
was.
you.
No joke.
There I
was.
was. I didn't prepare at all. And then we were playing the game, and I was like, here's the situation. And because I respond and listen, I was planning the game a minute before every single moment for 3 hours. That was the closest. But it was satisfying.
Was that really, really fun?
It was so much fun. Probably
sounds
one
so
of the
fun.
funnest ones I've ever
That
done.
sounds so fun.
And I created it for them, and that was what was the best part.
Yeah. So the answer to the question for you is I have always planned like, okay, this is where they're going to start out. Here's an encounter that they might have at the very least, right? Just the bare bones. But I have found the less that I plan, the more fun everybody has. And this is, I shout out Sly Flourish's Lazy Dungeon Master book all the time, but I'm doing it again because it's a guide for essentially like giving you permission to plan a lot less than you think you have to because everybody's gonna have more fun. It's just scarier. As a dungeon master, you're like, but what if I don't know it doesn't matter. Like just like have fun with it. And I have this fantasy that I was telling you about the idea of running a D&D game, a whole campaign where the players are all part of the concept, which is that I never plan anything. Like zero planning dungeon master, let's go. Like I just want to know what that feels like because the improvised bits of my games are always the most fun parts.
Yeah, do it.
Get it off rails. Go have fun. I surprise myself, and that's fun too. You know.
Yep.
There's this old saying that writer's block isn't where you can't think of anything to write. It's where everything you write you think sucks. And one of the ways they encourage you to get around it is if you can't think of anything to write, then just start writing about how you can't think of anything to write.
Yes.
And then that will beget writing. So when it comes to running games, I've discovered that like if you are unprepared, start by describing like the tavern keeper.
Sure.
And maybe he's got a mannerism, and then go and you will be just like the story will explode right in front of everybody.
I'll
And
tell you, another trick that has served me very well is the player. You tell me what it looks like. You enter a room and it's very spooky.
Totally.
What's it look like?
Spooky.
You know, and it's engaging for them, and it takes the burden off of you.
Yeah.
I know, sorry, Kaiji, you were trying to tell a
Oh,
story.
yeah,
at the
I
beginning
have a
of
very fond memory of exactly this question. So I ran an experimental game with a group of friends that I trusted, right? So this, a caveat, this works, the thing I did works with a group that's already played together
Yes.
and they sort of know how
Absolutely,
people play, right?
yeah.
So I did a thing where it's like, we had a session 0, every player was an orc and they started out enslaved. Session 0 was them breaking out of enslavement, and then Session 1 was them creating their own village, right? So what I did was I gave them the map. Here's a map, here's your village, here's a kingdom over here, here's another village over here, here's what surrounds you. How do you want to proceed in building your village?
I love that so much.
I didn't have to plan anything, right? Suddenly they were like, okay, well, here are the resources. We need to chop down some trees first, right? We need to build some buildings. We need to make contact with that village over there. Oh, there's some harpies nesting in this canyon right here. We should probably trade, Crazy stuff started happening. I didn't have to write any of it, and everyone had a really, really good time. So yeah, if you have a group of players you trust, trust in their ability to come up with fun for themselves, you know, using your world.
And some when I float this idea past seasoned dungeon masters who've been in it since the 7th grade kind of thing, sometimes they're like, that's how D&D is supposed to be played. It's supposed to be improvised that way. And I just did not know that. I didn't know that. I thought it had to be this big cognitive burden, this big creative load that you have to prepare for and draw maps for and everything. But maybe it just doesn't. Maybe it can also just be pretend that makeup.
Back in my day.
Yes.
But the books, they were rule supplements, but they weren't setting supplements. The settings were different. Like Ravenloft was a different product, and the Forgotten Realms was a different product. So people that just played D&D, it was anything. It was like there's probably some elves and orcs, and you know there's bows and arrows, and you know some guy knows how to smite. But I mean, it was all siloed. And then you know over time, the Forgotten Realms has somewhat become, you know, the default setting, or, you know, we all have our love for Spelljammer or Greyhawk or whatever. We've got our jams, you know, but I mean, back then, it was like, you're in this land and there's a castle, I guess, and maybe we should chop some wood. I don't know. You know, and now there's a dragon, roll initiative. 100%. Now, let me, so we talked about the fact that, again, you know, the rules exist to facilitate the story, not the other way around, but what do you think is the minimum rules that somebody should understand? It's a two-part question. What's the minimum they need to know? And is there anything that you always throw out? And I will jump in here. Everyone knows I hate attacks of opportunity. I hated it worst in 3rd edition. It's palatable in 5th. I hate it in 3rd. So I'm like, this is written by someone who's never been in a fight. I hate it, and I always threw out those mechanics. And I also...
Speaking as a former D&D designer, we do not get in fights. That is not a thing that we do.
and I always make it 1 always fails and 20 always succeeds, even on skill checks. Because I like there always an element of risk. You know, you're never so good that you can't biff it. You're never so outclassed that you can't throw a Hail Mary. But yeah, minimum rules load, rule that you always throw out or change.
I love taking 10. I think that's such a cool rule from 3.5, and they offer to carry it over in the DM's guide. I also love
Stop.
I don't mean to interrupt, but just for the sake of people that maybe don't know what taking 10 is, what
I know what it is for sure, but other people might not.
Yeah.
Oh, so taking 10 is where if you are in a situation where it's not necessarily stressful and you have a moment to do it, instead of rolling a d20, you can just say, "Can I just take a 10?" As if,
a 10 minutes.
as if you just took a 10 on the roll.
Got it. Yeah,
So then you add your proficiency to 10 and go.
So you don't have to roll.
Yeah, so there's no roll, because there's no real stress if you're like, if you've got time to take on this lock you're picking and you don't have to worry about it. You can say, "Can I take 10?"
You're making a bowl of soup, you know, like whatever, just pick the 10.
Thank you.
know how to make soup.
I keep forgetting that's something that like it hasn't carried over, but that's one.
cool, yeah.
There's also a rule that I carry over, and this is I do this specifically. It's not to be a mean GM. I do it because I think it adds a lot of drama. I know that some people think that when you get higher level, you become a hit point sponge. I think that's kind of could be the case if you don't, you know, if you want to narrate it in a more dramatic fashion. One of the things that I like to do is there's an optional rule in the DM's guide about taking massive damage from a single hit. And if you take more than, I think it's like half your hit points of damage from a single hit, you have to make a con roll
used to
or
do that.
drop to 0.
Yeah, I used to do that.
Which I think
Faint dead away.
My players thought I was the meanest DM, and I'm like, but
like, look, if you're swimming in a pond and you didn't realize that was the green dragon's favorite spot, and he cannonballs on you without realizing you were there, like,
what are you gonna do?
what do you roll con? I'm sorry, roll your Constitution versus Dragon Butt, because that's gonna hurt.
That is always one of the funniest things. You know, this game, you know, you've got hit points, you drop down, you drop to 0, you're unconscious, and then there's a whole separate mechanic for dying. But just the idea that I've been cloven with a great sword, I still got like 10, I'm all right. You know, you're like,
Yeah, it's just a flesh wound.
scratch.
Not as bad as I thought. I would, to answer your question, I would say be familiar with the very basics of the game, right? Know what happens when someone tries to attack something. Know what happens when one of your players tries to attempt a skill. Stuff like that. Know what happens when they have to resist something. All that basic stuff. But for me, personally, stuff like, I don't keep track of spell components. I just don't.
Yeah.
I want to, because I love the flavor it adds. But,
I do,
but yeah,
like,
I typically don't.
Like that and like arrow count.
Yeah.
Like I famously will just be like, "Oh, you still got arrows? I believe you."
Only if it's something super weird, where you expressly need the eye of a basilisk.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
You have the
well, now you got
basilisk
two of
eye
them.
arrow.
You got your 2 basilisk guys. So that's really gonna. Otherwise, I'm with you.
Yeah.
Do you have a pinch of bat fur?
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to
Cast your spell.
Yeah, for sure.
One of the things I always played with, and I would love to hear y'all's thoughts on this, but one of the things I always played with so that I can encourage players to be more descriptive so they don't just say I cast fireball, is I'll offer them like a +1 to a roll, or maybe even raise the DC to resist a spell by 1 if they can describe to me pulling out their spell components and casting the spell.
That's
So
pretty good.
sometimes,
cool.
but I'm like, it's something I'm fiddling with as a GM, like, because I just want to, I want to incorporate more of that into it. I love the flavor of like, you pull out bad guano and a candle and you cast fireball. Like, I want to know more.
The visual of that is always ridiculous to me, though. You know,
Why
like
do
the
you
Umber
have-
Hulk's right here, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, hang
Wait a
on.
minute. Let me get my marbles out.
Yeah.
Get my back guano. Yeah.
I would say for like the minimum, and this is why I love this. Minimum is advantage and disadvantage. You could play on the spot and just have a d20 and just roll a whole game, and all right, it's good. Advantage, disadvantage.
Again, for people who may not know what that means.
Absolutely. Advantage is when you take, so normally you roll a d20 for your roll. Advantage, you get 2 d20, you take the highest. Disadvantage, you do 2 d20 and take the lowest. But also along with your always fails. So I do a thing called roll for story, and it makes me so bummed out when my players roll low and then get sad. I'm like, no, don't be sad. This is fun. Watch this.
exactly.
They roll a 1 on when they go to hit someone. I'm like, roll damage. They're like, okay. I'm like, all right, now tell everyone at the table how you hit yourself. And I make them take their own damage, and they get really excited. So I've kind of nurtured my table in a way where they get excited, and they're like, can I automatically fail this? Because I have a really good idea. And
I love that.
I
Sure.
sometimes, when people roll 1, I have this running gag. I have an NPC named Shady Jeff. And every time someone, not every time, but like a lot of times when someone rolls a 1 on an attack, I'll be like, oh yeah, and this NPC walks in the background, you cleft his arm in twain again.
Poor Jeff.
Sorry, Shady Jeff, He's always
What is
there.
workman's
messed
comp
up.
like?
I know,
that for a job
exactly.
Like that?
Poor Shady Jeff.
Yeah, we have an actual person who has worked on the game. And
Yeah.
again, what do you think is the
Okay.
minimum rules load in Zone of Safety if there's anything that you don't use?
I think that a new DM should read, and I am going to look at the camera and talk directly to Jeremy Crawford right now, lead rules designer of Dungeons and Dragons. They should read the DM's guide cover to cover. I'm just saying, like, you don't have to know, you don't have to memorize it, but the reason I think you should read the DM's guide cover to cover is because you're paying my friends' salaries.
Big thanks to Jeremy Crawford.
Nepotism.
Big thanks.
But also, you're gonna get so many cool ideas for
Yes.
being like the creative stuff that you're gonna be able to do at the table, because that DM's guide is just chock full of cool stuff. Like you got your underwater rules. There's a whole section for like environmental rules underwater, and you're like, dude, I could run an underwater campaign. This is so cool. Like there's just a lot of really fun ideas to be had in there. And as far as rules that I specifically change or ignore, the answer is none intentionally, because and I mean, we're about to see a game that I'm DMing. I definitely forgot and misread some rules and didn't adjudicate them properly, but at the table it just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. It's all about like, okay, you didn't. There was I'm gonna call out my sweet player Reggie Watts last year. Didn't have a character sheet when he showed up on camera, and I was like, cool, that's fine. I probably can figure out what stats a ranger would have, so roll a d20. And I remember somebody said like, yeah, that's what a good dungeon master should do, is just roll with it. And I'm like, yeah, you should. It doesn't matter. Like the rules are great, and you should be familiar with them, or at least know where to find them to look them up. But yeah, they just, at the end of the day, they matter so much less than the fun that's being had in the moment at the table.
So we've mentioned the fact that it is a collaborative art. It is a story you are telling together with your friends. Just give me a number, just a number of roughly how much of the game do you think the DM is responsible for?
Like percentage-wise.
Percentage-wise. Is it half on the DM? Is it 75 on the DM?
This is going to be really subjective.
Yeah,
That's totally subjective.
That really depends on your play group. Like if you, for example, if you're playing with a bunch of players who have never played D&D before, possibly your percentage as the DM is going to be much higher because it's going to be like herding kittens a little bit, right? But if you're with a bunch of players that are familiar with the game, you've played with them before, don't know, 30%?
Yeah,
25%?
if that. Yeah,
that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Every now and then you'll get a player especially a new player who's very shy.
Yeah.
And you'll need to let them realize they're in a safe space, and this is a lot of fun to open up and play, and don't be afraid to draw your sword. Draw your sword. Let's see what happens. I think every now and then you'll get a spike of you having to step in a little bit more and sort of encourage them to step out of their shell, and sometimes that'll take a while, and you'll do that for 10 sessions. Sometimes it takes a while, but so it does. I would agree. I would say it's subjective. It varies all the time. But when it is going smooth and you guys have found your groove, I would say 35%
Tops,
maybe.
something like that.
Yeah.
You're building a frame before you get to the table, and once you get there, you can relax because you did all the hard work, and now it's just about kind of tossing them the ball, and then they play with the ball like maniacs. It's wonderful inside of that framework. So you really don't do too much as long as you're listening. And
Yeah,
reacting.
listening is huge. And also, the sessions where your players are just talking amongst themselves, isn't that magic? The best games, though I think maybe the worst games I've ever run were 90% the dungeon master having to do the hard carry, and the games where it's 10% me, 90% my players, and I'm just oh, they're in it. Oh, they're pretending. Look at them go. That's the best feeling in the
And then
world.
they thank you afterwards.
I
They're
know,
you're the best GM, and you're you're welcome.
you're welcome.
Yeah, no, anything I can
Feel
do to
free
help.
to keep bringing snacks over.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Believe it or not, our time has flown, so we're into our very last question, and we got 5 minutes.
Okay.
So we'll give
Okay,
each
okay.
of you a chance to answer this one. What final piece of advice or pep talk would you give to a DM who wants to try, but is maybe scared? Maybe a person who's watching this right now who's can I really? What would you say to that person? And you're all gonna get a chance, so whoever feels most inspired, take it.
I would say, guys, if you are in a group of friends and you guys are looking to play D&D and you're in that situation where no one really wants a DM, dive in. It's so worth it. I put it this way to everyone who starts out at anything, right? When you start a thing, you're probably the worst person at that thing in the world, right? You just accept it. You're I've never ridden a bike before. Probably the worst bike rider ever, right? Never DM'd before. Your first session is probably gonna go a little rough, right? Once you accept that and you just sit down and you muscle memory this stuff, it really does not, it doesn't remain hard for long. No, just the first couple of sessions, if you can get through that, you're golden.
Yeah, on that, what I usually suggest is find a module that is one session, just a one shot. Run that one shot, and then run it again. And remember, don't be hard on yourself of what you failed to do, because now you've gained experience points as a game master, and then you do that 5 times. Same group or different group, doesn't matter, but just get that repetition in.
Yeah.
That's
You'll
great.
get better.
My pep talk is that being a dungeon master is secretly the best role at the table, and a lot of people don't know that because there are so few dungeon masters. And I feel like it's a secret that we're keeping, because I love to dungeon master. It's gotten to the point where when I sit and I play as a character, I'm this is fun, but I want to control it. I want to be God.
and I to be able to be the person who's hey, we all having fun at this table, woo! I love that role. I love that role. So that's my pep talk. Is secretly, it's actually the coolest part of the game.
I would say, if you're scared to play, be scared. It's okay. There's a whole world of characters waiting for you to find them. If you just want to roll those dice, there's so many stories waiting for you. Be scared. Do it.
Yeah.
Do it. That's the adventure.
Yeah.
I would say that would be my number one piece of advice. And tell your players, hey guys, I'm nervous.
Yeah, tell them
Exactly. Yeah.
That's a really great
huge.
point.
Let everybody
That's a
know.
really great point.
Let everybody know. Let it be a part. Let it be a part of the game.
Yeah.
No matter what happens, at some point, Hamlet has to stab Polonius.
Yeah.
Okay. If you're gonna be scared, then okay, tonight Hamlet is scared.
Right.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. Let that inform the game. Let that be a part. The energy will change. If you're scared, be scared, but just do it. Be vulnerable.
You're open,
It's scary.
it will allow
Do it.
them to
Totally.
be open too.
That's where the joy and the adventure comes from. So
Yeah.
do it.
Absolutely. The beauty of these games, for my money, is when I explain to people what these games are, what Dungeons and Dragons is, role-playing is, it is an opportunity to live your favorite story. You know, what's your favorite book? What's your favorite movie? You into the Lord of the Rings? What would you like? How would you like to be in the Lord of the Rings? You know, and that is a journey that you get to take together. And I've made some of the most meaningful, lasting memories with friends of mine from games we played because it feels real. You know, and if I had to tell anybody something, I would say just like what Kaiji said: start. You're gonna suck. That's all right. Just have a good time with your friends.
Give yourself permission to be a beginner.
That's all because we all started somewhere, you know. And again, don't compare yourself to us. Just take from us things that you like how we do. How can you apply it? How can you improve upon it? And most importantly, make sure you're telling your story because only you can. Only you can take people on that adventure. Now,
well said.
We're almost done. So before we sign off of here, where can people find you beautiful people, besides momentarily, at least with you, Kay, but
Yes.
who you are, where they can find you?
Find me on Twitch. I can be found at Kate Welch with 4 H's. I'm mostly on nothing, no platform, but there are pictures of my dog on Instagram.
You're in here though, Kate.
I'm here. I'm right in there.
You're in the hard box.
You can find me
though.
in B-Day's heart.
You can find me at 16-bit Eric, 16 Eric, ERIC, everywhere, Twitch, Instagram, and Twitter. Yep.
Satine Phoenix on everything, and thebardbook.com and satinesquest.com.
And you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and what's that one that the children's love? The
Talk.
The Talk Talks. Yes,
The Talk
I'm also
Talks.
on the Talk Talks on Kaiji Tang. Yeah, hope to see you guys online.
Y'all already know me, but I wouldn't be me if I didn't plug myself at B-Dave Walters everywhere. So thanks so much to all of our Dungeon Masters at this table. We hope we've inspired you to give it a try because you should. And I can't stress this enough because I can do it, we can do it. I promise you can do it.